Hello, welcome back to this series of videos about French polishing. Basically, we are now ready to move on to the next step. What I did yesterday was to do, I did 4 sessions applying French polish like I was explaining without any oil, and just making sure that it doesn't stick, and if the rubber feels like it's going to start sticking, then it's time to move on to a different area. So now I know that I've got a good amount of polish. It's not huge, but enough to know that now I can start using oil to be able to spread the content of the rubber and to spread the French polish in the right way. So what I'm going to do is that instead of going into one of my old rubbers, which is what I said I was going to do, actually I'm going to carry on with this brand new one, because then you can see actually how it works, because the chances are that you don't have one rubber that you used for years. So, and you can see that actually this is already starting to take the shape and keep the shape that we need to have. One thing that you will notice here is that the cloth is starting to break up, and this is quite normal. I don't know if you can see that in the image, but all you need to do now is to get the inside and move it along to a different part of the cloth, and then we do the same. We're going to compress it a little bit, and I'm going to start folding that end and then folding this end as well. And now I made it into a slightly smaller shape, so everything is compressing nicely, and as I massage the rubber with my thumb, I'm helping to compress it a little bit. And then I'm also creating these edges in the front, which is going to be quite necessary really to do this job properly. Right, so this is what it should look like. And the way that I usually do this is that I start working on the soundboard and the head, then I work on the sides and the back of the head, and then I will work in the back and in the back of the head, and then finally on the neck and on the bridge. So that way I know that I can lay the guitar down like this, even though it's sort of resting in the back a little bit. And then, because all of this is still would be a little bit too soft to put anything onto it, but if I put it down like this, it's only this little edge there which is not going to be an issue, and it will not affect the fact that we got sort of French polish in the soundboard. And then it means that we can do one round all around the guitar, and then we're going to hang it and leave it for a few hours before we do the next session. So I'm going to get my alcohol, I'm going to get the shellac, but now I'm also going to get the oil. So I'm going to start like before. I'm going to clean this a little bit first. I'm just going to put a little bit of alcohol in here, and I'm going to clean. Yeah, that's good. So I'm going to put a few drops of shellac. I'm going to put some in this side as well, because I want to keep feeding the rubber, because it's still a little bit too new. Then I'm also going to put a little bit of alcohol up here, because this is quite dry, and all it's going to do is to suck up the liquid rather than allow it to go down. Then I'm just going to put here a few drops, not as many as the shellac. And now I'm going to put a couple of drops on the soundboard, but I'm going to put them on top of the masking tape. It wouldn't matter if you put it anywhere else actually. I'm just going to put 3 drops. And I'm going to switch on this light so that I can see better where I am with things, and I'm also going to roll up my sleeve. So first, what I want to do is, without applying too much pressure, just quite gently, I want to spread the oil everywhere. And you can now start doing circles, as well as big 8s, or also just long strokes along the grain. But in that case, you always need to come out, don't stop to then lift up. So what I want to do is to work the oil into the surface, and as I put a little bit of pressure, then I will be offloading the shellac from the rubber into the soundboard. So also another thing that you want to look for is that, because there's a little bit of oil, by now you should be getting a little bit of a vapor trail that the rubber leaves, which evaporates quickly and it sort of goes matte again. But it's a good sign that you've got enough oil to work with this surface. But also now you can see that the rubber is not going to stick so easily. So you can now work these surfaces for a lot longer. And what you want to do here is to be sure to make sure that you are methodical, so that you are sort of visiting all the areas of the guitar sort of evenly and in the same amounts. So having these little edges here are very helpful to be able to reach into these corners right next to the fingerboard. And of course this is very easy to do here because I don't have the bridge in place. But what would you do if the bridge is there? Because obviously that's going to be an obstacle. So what I would do is that I would do exactly the same thing, but obviously over here you can only approach it in this area. But with the same corner that you got here in the rubber, you can rub it against that edge, well, all the edges really, and then get another point in here and rub it against that edge and this edge. You don't need to do that all the time. You need to do it from time to time to make sure that you're going to be depositing some shellac in there. But like we said about the sides on the top where they meet the heel, if you overdo it, you will end up removing the shellac that you put there, the same as in here. So you have to make sure that you don't forget about it, because by the time you notice and it's obvious that you haven't done it, it's going to be harder to sort it out. But yes, you just have to remember to do that. And the same here, I don't do this pass all the time, but once I've done a few passes everywhere, then I come back to do it next to the ebony. Right, so I can see that this is now in need of a little bit more shellac, but before I load it, I'm going to come up to the head, and here I can put a lot more pressure, because obviously nothing is going to break, but also because there's not much stuff in the rubber, it means that I can put more pressure to get it out, like that. I can also do these two faces, which they also tend to be a little bit neglected. So now I can come back to the soundboard and load the rubber again, which is what I'm going to do. Always remember to point your bottle somewhere else, not to the guitar, because sooner or later you could have a problem otherwise. So now I'm going to put also a little bit of alcohol, and the reason why we use alcohol now is because it's not quite mixed with the shellac here, and what's going to do is to help to reactivate the stuff that is there already. And I'm not going to put any more oil because I've already did that. And like before, I want to spread and offload everything evenly without applying too much pressure. And now I'm going to go into circles, and gradually I can increase the pressure a little bit. You have to be careful how much pressure you put into your soundboards, because up here it's much more rigid than down here. So in here you can apply a little bit more pressure, but here you have to be careful not to overdo it, because obviously you don't want to break anything. And all the way along the edges as well. Great, so this is starting to look really nice, even though it's nowhere near there. I can still see that along this area, for example, the polish is still very thin, and along here as well. On the rosette I can see a few little bits of grain open. So all those are going to indicate when this is ready and it's done, but we're not there yet. But I don't want to be doing too much. I want to make sure that the coats that I apply are quite thin. So I have done this twice in front of you here while we're doing this video, and I'm going to move on to a different part of the guitar. But normally I would do this 4 or 5 times, but if I do that here, you know, this video is just going to be boring and too long. So the same thing that I've done in the soundboard and in the head, which I've done twice, I would do it 4 or 5 times, and then I would move on to the sides. So now I can put the guitar down like this. And again, I want to reshape, make sure that I always have the right shape here. And the same, we load the rubber with shellac, a little bit of alcohol, not as much as shellac, like that. And now the oil, I'm going to put it in the rubber, not in the wood, because it's not so easy to put it in there. So all I'm going to do is to put 3 drops in here as well. And we're going to start applying the content of the rubber. I'm not going to put too much pressure to start with. I want to spread this mix everywhere. And now I want to get up here like this and like that, and also in this part of the heel. And then once I have spread everywhere the content of the rubber, I can start increasing the pressure of the rubber, the amount of pressure that I'm putting down into the wood. In here you can apply a little bit more pressure than in the soundboard, because this is not going to break too easily. And you can see that I don't go up there all the time, but I don't ignore it like that. And now, before loading to go into the other side, I'm going to do the same on the head here, in the back of the head. In this area here, and in the other side as well. And on the top. And because there's hardly any polish here, I'm not going to have any runs, but I'm going to be polishing these areas without having to worry about having to clean runs in funny places where it's not so easy to access. And I'm going to do the other side very quickly. exactly in the same way. Oops. And now we spread everywhere, everything everywhere, gently, not too much pressure. You always want to get these edges and make sure that we don't forget about them either. So the sides don't need a huge amount of going on and on and on. But basically, like with the soundboard, I will be doing maybe about 3 or 4 more times, exactly the same thing that I've done. Now I'm going to do some in the back, and I want to reshape this a little bit. And the same, the oil, I'm quite happy to put it here, and I'm also going to do 3 drops like everywhere else. So the first thing is to spread the oil everywhere, doing big circles, not much pressure, and being quite kind and soft in here. And another thing that you could be mindful of is the edges, because it's very easy to stay away of the edges so that we don't pass the rubber too much into here, because we could end up having some runs and we want to avoid them. But if we do that, then we're not going to have them polished properly. So what I usually do is that when the rubber is just being loaded, I don't get too close to the edge, but then once I know that the rubber is not as heavy, then I can start focusing on the edges of the whatever surface I'm working on. And like I said before, you focus on the difficult areas, the rest will sort of get done by itself. Now this bag looks already like $1 million, really. It's looking beautiful. I can see the vapor trail of the oil, and after a minute or so that I've been here, I can start increasing the pressure in the rubber a little bit to make sure that everything goes really flat, and also to force all the liquid out of the rubber into the wood. And because there's a little bit of oil, now this is not gonna get sticky too quickly. If it's a little sticky, then it could be because you have too much polish, or it could be because you don't have enough oil. So I like doing circles, eights. You can do them in all directions, and then I like finishing with a little bit less pressure along the grain. The back is really the most satisfying part of the guitar to polish, because it's really quite easy, and very quickly you get a really nice surface here. It's not ready yet, but it's starting to look beautiful. So now we're gonna move on to the neck, and on the neck I'm not ready to start with the oil and the alcohol because my grain is not ready yet, it's not filled completely. So what I want to do is that I want to have a slightly thicker amount of polish here, and then later on in the process you'll see how we're going to be filling the grain in the neck. But that's not something that we need to do quite yet. So I just want to carry on building up the polish into here a little bit. Okay, like this. So now I'm going to put the guitar to one side, and with what's left in the rubber I'm going to do the bridge. You can see it's quite handy to be able to glue it into a block. I think I'm actually going to put just one drop of shellac in. And again, I'm not going to be working on this for very long because all of this is very small. So before you realize, you're going to be removing more stuff that you are leaving here. So that's it. And now I can put the rubber back in the pot. So normally, if I wasn't doing this video, I would still be working on this because I just wanted to show you sort of how I do, how I apply the shellac in this stage of the polishing. But like I was saying earlier, I would be doing 4 or 5 sessions like I showed you in the front, the same in the back, maybe a little less in the sides because it's a little bit smaller, and again you could end up overdoing it, and always making sure that you don't forget to do the bits that are always a little bit more tricky to do. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to carry on polishing. Now because I've got polish in the back, I don't want to put it down again to carry on with the soundboard, so I'm just going to leave it for a couple of hours until I can come back to it again. But basically what I'm going to do between now and the next video off camera is I'm going to carry on working exactly in the same way that I've just shown you, and on the top of my head, but I will tell you exactly in the next video. But I think what this guitar is going to need, because of the mix and how everything is working and the new rubber, I think what I'm going to be doing is a session every 2 or 3 hours every day. So maybe 3 or 4 sessions each day for the next 3 or 4 days, and then I will show you what it looks like, and we'll see what we need to be doing from then on. So until then, enjoy polishing.